What's up, y'all? It is Wednesday, 6 p.m. West Coast, 9 p.m. East Coast. It's the trades. We're just getting warmed up. We're going to start in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Let us know where you are watching from. Let us know if you represent a crew or not. We have a really great show. And we're going to save the questions in the chat later, halfway through the show. It's the trades. Tell a friend. Let us know where you are tuning in from. What city? What crew? We have a really good show. Chicago in the house. Two minutes, 2 minutes. We're going to start the show in 2 minutes. Let me know where you're from. You have Chicago so far. All right. We are going to start the countdown now.
This video has been brought to you by Break Connect. Go to the website and register. Check out what they have to offer at Break Connect.
Yo, what's up? This is Shadow Rock and Pro 41 of the Floor Gangs and Knuckleneck Tribe. And you're watching The Trades, the show about breaking hip hop and the business of. How's everyone doing in this fine Wednesday night? 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. East Coast. Man, it's been a crazy week, been super busy. If you didn't know, we're watching live from Instagram and at the same time live here on YouTube on the Pro for One channel. But if you want to join the chat, you have to go to the YouTube channel because basically you're just watching it on Instagram. That's not good enough for today. That's not good enough for today. Today we have a really great show. And just in case you missed it, last week we had a really dope show with Quickstep, the last of the Mohicans. This guy basically didn't stop breaking from the 80s to present day. Like, there's a lot of people that say, like, oh, we've been breaking for, you know, 40 years. No, you guys stopped, because if that was the case, we would have seen you guys. But from everyone that I've talked to, Quickstep has literally never stopped. And he talked about his story and why he didn't stop breaking, and it was a great story. Again, you could check that out here on the Pro 41 channel. How's everyone doing? Oh man, we're gonna have a really good show. It's gonna be really good. But before we do that, we have Chicago, another Chicago side, Sad in the house. We got Carlos, DMV in the house. We got, I believe, Brazil is in the house. This is gonna be, dude. We're gonna be talking about a lot of deep stuff today, a lot of dope things. But before we do that, of course, we have to clean house before we do that. First of all, I want to say you guys got me to 2,200 subscribers. But guess what? A lot of you guys are lurking. A lot of you guys are watching the content, but you haven't subscribed. So, what would be a great, great service to this channel is if you press the subscribe button. I don't like to say smash. Press the subscribe button. That way you help the channel. Basically, I'm already monetized. I made a whole $10 out of super chat. Shout out to AER B Boy B Girl podcast for giving me more. And DJ Endo G for supporting the channel with super chat and super thanks. I've made maybe $1 from all the views from the channel, but that's not important. But if you do subscribe, what helps with the channel is that we could upgrade a little bit. We could, like, I had a few problems last week as far as quality, the camera quality. You can help fix that. You basically can help get a new camera, get a new like microphone, all this cool stuff. Maybe get a staff. Who knows? But all you gotta do is basically hit the subscribe button, and it's free. And press the bell if you want to keep seeing content like this. Cool interviews, cool lives. You know what I'm saying? Maybe tutorials. I don't know. You can help out the channel right here. All right. Now next, shout out to the sponsors, Zen World CBD. So if you don't know what CBD is, it is from the cannabis plant, but it doesn't give you the head high. CBD actually heals. And the whole thing is it heals inflammation, especially for someone like me, a 49-year-old B-boy. And, I don't heal as fast. I don't recover as fast, not like you young kids. So I need all the advantage I can get, and I use CBD. And the company I use is called Zen World. Go to zenworld.com. And what we have here is the Zen World Nano Drops. You put this in your coffee, sports drink, or water, and you ingest it, and it helps with inflammation. And if you don't want to ingest it, you can always get the CBD freeze. This is the topical, so it's just like an icy hot. But an icy hot helps you, massages the muscle, but doesn't help, you know, uh, cure inflammation. CBD does. This is the active ingredient. So this is the same thing as icy hot, but with CBD. And you can help out the channel by going to zenworld.com, using the promo code Gearheads, GEARHEADZ, get 10% off. Why not basically save money as recover, rest, and, get better. All right. So that being said, okay. So first thing I want to say about the guest is this guy basically, when I started to do my research in breaking, I was like reaching out to different people. This person reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's this page on Facebook called the 70s Rocking Beat Boy page. And I was like, really? It's like, yeah, all the original guys are on there. And, and it's like you can actually reach out to them. I was like, really? Holy crap. And it's and the guy who puts the page together is Pluto 7 from TBB. I was like, bet. So I went to Facebook, I put myself in the group, and that's actually how I got connected to Charlie Rock. And I did that interview back in 2017, I believe. It's right here on the YouTube channel. And it was originally because I originally did the trades on Facebook, and that page was actually gave me access to a lot of the elders in breaking, and I thought it was really cool. The page is not around anymore, but at the same time, that's how I first met up with Pluto 7, and ever since then we started connecting, and we've done shows here on YouTube, we've done research, we worked together a lot, and that was really dope. So I gotta first give a shout out to my guest. So before we even do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the trailer to his book. So right now, before I bring him up, I'm put the trailer of the book up. And here we go. And whoops. They put the volume up. It's my bad.
Kind of funky. Kind of funky.
Whoops. What's going on? Hold on. Something's going on. My bad. Technical difficulties. Oof. What is going on? Let's try that again, shall we? Yes, I know the chat's gonna go crazy, but let's rewind that.
Kind of funky. Kind of funky.
All right, I'm probably gonna get copyright strike for that. Without further ado, representing Style Elements Crew, we got my man, Midus. What's up, brother? How you doing? Long time coming, man. Long time coming.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. So basically, yeah, like I said, as I was doing the research, you were the first one to you know, you know, guide me over to Pluto's page on Facebook. And yo, thanks for that, dude. So thanks for that, because that was like the thing that made me really connect to like a lot of the original dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that, but I don't remember like what led to that. I do remember sharing it with you, but
Yeah,
probably just because you're one of the few, you know what I mean, out there that does the digging and interested in these more like lineage, history kind of things. So
yeah, for sure. I don't even know. I think okay, then just to make a long story short, I think because like when Zulu Gremlin used to live in the Bay, and actually when I started to get into breaking, like I was a freestyle hip hop dancer first, right? Like 1991. And I think there was like this big influx of media that pushed like the true school movement, right? And I remember Zulu Gremlin being on there talking about like if you're into hip hop, you'd be into hip hop history. So that actually started like the thing. And then when he moved here, he actually talked about some of this stuff, like some of the styles and this and that. That got me even more interested. And, as I got deeper into breaking and to the history, then I was just like, okay, yeah, like I got, when Fresh as Kids came out too, that kind of like supported the whole, like, what, I didn't even know any of this because all I knew was like, basically like like Rocksteady, and that's it. Like I didn't know like beyond prior to that. You know what I mean? There's this whole history that spans even like from 1969 with the Rockers in Brooklyn and the Bronx, right? Like and then like how that influences. And we're gonna get into that before we do. Again, I want to give you a shout out because like I got this book. I got his book on Monday. And the thing is that what I didn't realize is my name's on here. It's backwards right now, but my name's on here. And I was like, what the heck? What's going on right there? It's backwards. Wait, where is it? Yeah, right here. It's backwards, but my name is in the book. And I was like, holy crap, man. So, and again, names like Nemesis, Nemesis is another guy who does a lot of digging, and he was really close to phase 2 as well. But before we get into the book, I just wanted to give you a shout out for it. Um, how did you first get exposed to like just breaking or just say hip hop dance? What was like, how did you first get started in it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I'm sure everyone's story it gets long, but I'll try to keep it
Yeah, let's
short.
go.
But I mean, I always had, you know, my older brother, for example, was like a little writer, tagger, troublemaker,
Okay.
and he was part of, he's 4 years older than me. I used to see his friends; they were like writers and stuff, and some were more like super hip hop inclined, some were a little bit more just causing damage style, But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
hip hop
yeah.
thing, like his friends, they would come over with Star Wars and like Can Control magazine and things like that. So I was like exposed to music and writing and breaking in some of those older films, and seeing Beat Street and all that stuff when I was young. But obviously, like for my generation, like the growing up in the mid to late '90s as a teenager, like young people my age weren't breaking and popping really that I knew of.
Mhm.
So I always liked the dance, but it was like something unattainable or untouchable. Like as far as my generation was considered like old school. You would
Mhm.
see it at parties at times, people throwing down. But then one day in '96, in my PE physical education class, there was I saw two young, like 1 grade younger than me, cats breaking, and they had like T-shirts with like Street Jams characters on the back and their
Okay.
crew name with it and
Right.
stuff. And they were like practicing, like not just messing around. They look serious, and they're like off to the side. So I was like super intrigued by that, and I went up to them and said, "Yo, you guys, you guys break and stuff?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we're part of this crew. This is my name, this and that." They're like, "You dance? You break?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Meanwhile, like I didn't really know how to dance. I just kind of mimicked some of the stuff I'd seen when I was young,
Mhm.
more like popping stuff actually. And then we just exchanged info. I started hanging out with them after school, practicing, meeting people from the neighborhood, meeting other people at my school that were into breaking. And I started seeing like, okay, there's some young people my age into this.
Right.
And then that just snowballed into like going to battle local crews after, then that snowballed into really like my beginnings into the dance and the scene was Radiotron 97.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like a year after like meeting these cats in my neighborhood and doing things regionally type of thing and practicing and getting into it more. Um I went to Radiotron 97 and I was blown away by that. And like
Okay. And this is
see
and this is LA, just to make to for the audience. So this is all in LA, right? So is that what
yeah,
city
yes.
exactly were you in?
So I'm from Rolling Heights. It's in the San Gabriel Valley,
Okay.
by West Covina, Pomona, like that area.
Okay.
And
Word.
then Radiotron was at East LA College that year. So
Mm.
yeah, it's all Southern California. And yeah, New York City Breakers was there like as a special guest. Like they had
Right.
they actually had a documentary screening like on the walls. Damn, what was the name of that? Underground Dance Masters, like Cool Pockets and those cats had made it. And
Right.
you see like this historic footage of locking and popping, and then just ciphers everywhere. Just the talent, it was crazy. Like I was like, what? This is like going to Zion and Matrix or something. You know what I mean? It was just like a tapping out of like bullshit around me kind of thing, and just seeing this beautiful scene. So I picked up as many flyers as I could that day for other events coming up, and started just going to events and meeting more people, and just yeah, from then on it just snowballed. But I mean, it's more complex. Like there was also like freestyle dancers in where I'm from, and I was
Right.
into freestyle dancing, and like popping was kind of like my thing as well. Like I said, that was kind of the first thing I gravitated towards before meeting the scene and everything like that. So yeah, it's a mixed story, but basically that's it. From like
Right.
'97 on, heavy
Okay.
into it.
Word. So you were there when it was like it was Soul Control versus Assorted Flavors. Was like, were you at that one? The radio
Um,
thing?
at that at the East LA College one, it was I want to say Abstract Flavors. I just
Yeah,
remember Abstract.
not started. Abstract flavor. My bad. My bad.
Yeah,
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 yeah. I'm like, my mind's like, yeah, okay, yeah. But that's the battle, right? It was like Soul Control versus them.
Nah, so the 97 one, I just, and Poe and Stuntman, all those guys could clarify, because what I remember is them showcasing. Like I just remember Abstract
Okay.
Flavor, Frankie, Poe, Stuntman, G Wiz, them performing, like kind of
Mhm.
doing a showcase. And then at the next one, the Soul Control versus, I was at that one as well.
Okay.
That was in
Because
like
it
a
was a
bowl.
series, right? It was like a series. Like it wasn't just
Yeah,
one. Yeah, it was a series, right? Caesar, that's how it was, right? Okay, word.
yeah. So I was at that one as well. I mean, from then on, man, I was at the first freestyle session and all that. So I was like, I was like sucked in, fully.
Right. So okay. So okay, 97 then. It's like 96, 97. So okay, so like the crews were like I said, like crews were out there where it's like, yeah, Soul Control, Abstract Flavors, obviously Stalimus were like the big dogs at that time. Renegades as well too, right? Like Renegades. Um and obviously like when you look at like Renegade, like crew like Renegades at the time, it was like they were kind of like, and then wait, and then also obviously like Air Force is still there, not as like strong as far as one of the younger crews. You still had Easy Rock and Asia One. They're doing Summit and stuff like that. So, and that's the contrast of like like when Caesar did Radiotron, and Summit was more like panels, and you know what I mean. Like it was like there was panels, and then it was like more of a cipher, while like Radiotron was the competition, showcase and competition, right? Like there were still
I
ciphers,
mean,
but yeah.
ciphers were crazy, bro. Like I
Mhm.
meant like this experience at the East LA College, it was ciphers everywhere. I don't
Right.
really remember a competition. That's why I'm saying like I don't even know if Abstract Flavor battled anybody. They might have.
Right.
I don't remember. I remember just crazy ciphers like Brick Rock from 101. I think battled Easy Rock there that day, and
Word. Okay.
yeah, just and you just see different ages, different styles, different ethnicities. Like I seen B girls killing it. I was like, I never really seen B girls killing it like that. Um, you see some gangster looking dudes, you see some raver looking dudes, some surfer dudes. It's everybody's in the building just going wild, and like the level was high. And mind you, like prior to that, my conception of breaking, even these young kids in my neighborhood that were like wearing like Street Jams characters, it was like still kind of old school how they were like
Mm.
walking Adidas and trying to be like
Yeah.
80s. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
to be in Radiotron, you just see everything like,
Right.
and it showed me like seeing the Droogies. I don't know if you remember the
Oh, yeah.
Droogies.
I actually mentioned the Droogies earlier.
Yeah, so just so much style, man, and so much like elevation happening. I seen a dude doing like hand spins on his elbow like this.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
It was just, and I was, yeah, so I was like shocked at the level it was at right there.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and you had a history the component to it, like a lot of I think Freeze from LA Breakers was on the mic, and people like Animation and people from Air
Mhm.
Force Crew talking about the history, and that in New York City Breakers, it was in the building. So this concept of hip hop culture was very present. This
Right.
concept of like know your roots and don't let the shit die out like it did in the 80s, and be treated like a spectacle or something.
Right. Yeah. I think is that one where I guess in Freshest Kids when animation does that super crazy backslide. Was that the event? Was that the
That's
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember yeah, because I know that in Freshest Kids, like the extras, DVD extras, there was like them talking about like New York City Breakers are like, yeah, it's like Powerful Pexter was kept messing up his like the intro and stuff.
that's
I do remember that. So you're at that one. Okay, yeah, that is different from the one with Abstract Flavors versus Soul Control. Because the floor I remember because the floor was different, right?
right.
That's
Right.
crazy, man.
Yeah,
That's
and I
crazy.
mean, and you're right. Like competitions were picking up, but mind you, like Radiotron at that time wasn't really a competition. They were like inviting people to do these battles, like Abstract versus Soul Control.
Right.
I don't even think there was like a competition besides that. It was just this crazy battle. I mean, it was hype, and there was other things going on, but it's interesting because like the competition emergence was happening gradually.
Yeah.
Even at the first freestyle session, there was a competition,
But
but
no
I
one
remember
cared.
the energy was in the silence.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
no,
was like,
straight up. Yeah, I was at that one too. No one cared about the competition, which was crazy because now it's like it was like really no one cared about the competition. If you watch that first tape, there's music dubbed over the competition. Like no one like You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and it felt like the competition was another kind of just fun thing. The
Yeah.
real like goal people were striving for were like these exhibition crew battles. Like at the next freestyle session, they had Imperial JBs or some crew from
Mhm.
Japan
Right.
battle Soul Control, Abstract Flavor combined.
Yeah.
So it felt like, and then I think at the third freestyle session where they had like Storm and them and Flying Tortillas, that's
Yeah.
when the competition became.
Yeah. I think that was the crazy part because, like I said, but it was just. I think in freestyle session one, what everyone tripped up, the word of what everyone talked about is Ivan flipping over everyone in the cipher, and then him doing air flare windmill, air flare windmill, air flare windmill. I think after that, it was like when everyone saw that, it was like,
That
holy,
was
like holy crap, this is like it's starting to get to like next level, like you know what I mean? And yeah, like everyone was there, like Easy Rock, Po One, Flow Master, Floor Rock, Crumbs, like you know what I mean? Like it was pretty crazy. Like yeah, it's pretty good. And then like Foot Clan won, which eventually they became Rhythm Bugs. It was like
right.
Frank and Ryan, Reveal, yeah, Manson, crazy, yeah. So okay, so like yeah, I want to set that up because that so you started around like 96, 97. And yeah, now that you're saying that, it's like there was a lot of different things getting developed at that time, right? Like you said, there was like the '80s, the guys that were trying to be like the '80s, right? Like guys you saw in the thing. But then there was this movement, like you had, I don't know if you remember Homework, like Homework. It was just like, and I was talking about earlier on Instagram when I was promoting the show, is that there was this lineage that comes from Ken Swift. The rumor is, and I'm sure he'll check me on this, but then the rumor is like, in the 90s, one of the things you see the similarities between is this guy named Nico from Throwdown Rockers. Like he had a very animated style. And when Kenny was breaking the 80s, he didn't necessarily have that style. But when he was in the 90s, he had this like quick freeze, like the art, like we call that eye candy. And then from there, you have from Kenny, there's Flow Master being from Virginia, and then Ghost being from Virginia too, like DMV, and then Lions of Zion having that, and then Flubber, and then spreading to France, Division Alpha. Then, but at the same time, in Southern California, you had Remind, and all of a sudden, like then you had Stuntman, and Stuntman has that shirt where it's like that lineage of just that style, right? Kenny, Flow Master, Remind, Stuntman, and this is what was going on. Like late '90s, this was like the new thing, right? It was like different rhythm changes. It like for most people, it wouldn't even look like if you were to relate breaking to it. There's breaking elements, but it's not like footwork and power moves and freezes. It's just this we call that eye candy. And were you part of that development of style? Like how did that come about as far as like how you saw it? Because you didn't necessarily do like footwork or like air flare halo or whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, when I started in my neighborhood, again, like we were watching beat, like we had no reference points beyond like Beat Street, Breaking, and I think Seven Gems video. We had, and
Okay.
people dubbed it. These were
Okay.
like the three videos, like so. Especially Beat Street and Breaking, we're like mimicking that. Like, I mean, I was like doing footwork and Broncos and swipes and backspins and stuff like that. Even like knee spins, you see Lee do in there, those were like the first, and actually the first crew I was a part of, like real crew, was West Coast Rockers.
Oh, word. Okay.
So Little Rock and
Word.
Jetic, Friction, and a lot of
And,
people
so,
doing
and that's basically a product of Easy Rock, right? Like that's like kind of like that, like
Cool Ski, Easy Rock, yeah. Like,
yeah.
I mean, again, I don't want to speak definitively because those cats have a richer history with the beginnings of it. But yeah, Kulski played for sure a key role in it. And he was always around. We practiced in Fullerton at this Korean church, and Easy Rock and Kulski and all, Asia, and then would be there. But yeah, so it's not like that was rejected. It's just I was gravitating towards dancers in LA. Mind you, I'm not aware of this broader history, at that point. I'm gravitating towards Drunk Funk, Stuntman, Biz, Shrimp Woo, Cusser, Poe, Brick Rock. There's a lot of names, and a lot of people know these names, and I mean, a lot of people don't know these names except maybe cats like you who were around at the time. But you know what I'm saying when it's like there's not that much footage of these guys. I'm seeing them at hip hop events. I'm seeing them at jams. I'm seeing them at raves. I'm gravitating towards them in person when I see them. I mean,
Right.
and their style was a lot of. It's not like they wouldn't do footwork, but it was just a
Right.
lot of like technical kind of connections and freezes, which I consider part of the dance. You know, like you're
Mhm.
mentioning Kenny and uh, I do have to maybe kind of disagree a little bit. I think there is footage of Kenny in the 80s. Again, he would be the one to kind of comment
Yeah.
on when.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
stuff. But if you look at that like common ground footage of Rocksteady with that first like thing with Henry Shaw Font, you know, where they broke Rocksteady up into two
Yeah.
crews and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah. Yep.
Frosty and Lowe's,
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah.
see Kenny doing stuff similar to what he was doing in the 90s. Now he elevated it crazy and for sure influenced myself and others, and definitely the people I was influenced off were influenced off Flo and Kenny and that type of
Right.
thing. So
Yeah.
that's how the lineage passes on. But yeah, it was like these conceptual kind of things to bring in. And yeah, definitely
That's
like
true.
that's what I gravitated
That
towards
was
for
that
sure.
was that was like you. That's the last. You just blew me away because like the last thing that I would thought you were like linked to West Coast rockers. You know what I mean? Like, so that's like
Yeah,
that's a trip. Like, what? Really? Oh shoot, that's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Because
but I do want to kind of like just to reaffirm your point. My style was not a traditional breaking style. It was always a mix. You know, I was kind of like popping, freestyling, and like dabbling. I mean, when I'm with West Coast rockers or a bunch of breakers, I'm not gonna pop. You know what I mean? Like it's like they're all b-boys. So when we
right,
practice together, I'm jumping in there doing kind of the same thing everybody's doing, but like mixing in popping elements and
right,
doing a lot of what we call ups. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Dancing on top, stuff like
yeah.
that. So yeah, but so I don't want to take away from what you're saying. Like my style wasn't traditional or orthodox. It was like a little outside of the box. And at that time, like there was no popping scene really, and no
That's true.
other house.
Yeah,
What we see now didn't exist. Like the hub was the breaking scene. All hip hop, real cultural stuff was happening through the breaking scene. You know,
right,
and I think we as like the breaking community should take credit a little bit for that. You know, like it's the foundation for all these branches of street styles today
right.
and what
Yeah,
they modeled. You know,
yeah.
and at the time there was poppers and freestyle dancers, and you know, shout out to Popcorn Chicken, legendary freestyle dancer from
That's
LA.
popcorn chicken.
You'd be at Radio Trans. So the culture was there, man, especially in LA.
Right.
Like,
Right. Now that you think about it, yes, like there wasn't really popping competitions just yet. Not like that. If anything, because like Battle of the Year, when you watch that, or you watch Radiotron, like when there was the competition part, like you would see the popper go against the popper, right? Like so it's like, you know what I mean? Like the early Battle of the Years, you know, J Rock's in the house. It was like, yeah, it was like Tommy Boy would go against the Southside Rockers guy. Like, and even like when I was in Rock Forest, and you know, it was Selah versus Bionic Man. Like it was kind of like it was still kind of, you know, together and stuff like that. Just real quick too, I just shout out to Popcorn Chicken. He was in Adrian Young's video. And it was like Mikey Disco, and now Adrian Young, you know, that guy's big time
he's
producer and
a,
stuff like that.
so Adrian Young is a freestyle dancer and was originally right, and like
Yeah,
there was a thing in real close to where I live called Foundation, and there
yeah,
was like
yeah,
Foundation Funk Collective used to have this
yeah,
kind of like open session, open mic, and open dance floor on Wednesdays or Thursdays, like every week, and it was like super underground hip hop, and
yeah,
you had freestyle dancers and b-boys and b-girls there, and
right,
Adrian Young was like always there. You know what I mean?
right,
So
yeah,
that way, these two things coexisted, and
yeah,
like you know, sometimes there was little conflict, but overall, it was just like coexistence. It was like
right,
there
right.
and there. Sometimes people were cross pollinating styles. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, just real quick story too. I actually performed at one of the Fun Collective things back in '95. And this is when I was rapping. No one knows that. And we opened up for Advent Clan. So it
Okay.
was like, so it's basically, you know, I knew those guys from them freestyle dancing. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, it's just funny that you mentioned that because like when you said, because like, shout out to B too, because I was at those events as well. Like, so it's
Yeah.
just like, so it's just funny
Yeah.
how it's like that's that full circle. You just said, oh yeah, that's right, Funk Collective and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. You know, this is like 95. It was 95. And that's like, because I wasn't yet, I got back into dancing like 96. But before that, I was like freestyle dancer, 91 to 94, got into martial arts, got back around 96. But then I committed to breaking. And I went full into breaking and stuff like that. So damn, that's pretty crazy. That's dope though. Like so that's why I want to know your background because like yeah, like I said, like like I just knew you guys like when you guys would come to the Bay, it was like Drunk Funk, you, Stunts, G Wiz all together, right? And then it's like I remember it was either G Wiz or Stuntman had that Got Ups t-shirt. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's dope because like now we have people in the chat because this is a story that like this is our own story that's not even told yet. We're still like figuring out the 70s and shit like that and a little bit of the 80s, right? We haven't even gotten to like the 90s or the like late 90s and stuff and how we're here now. Like not a lot of people even know that story. Kids are just in it, right? They watch YouTube and like I got into breaking, you know what I mean? Like I said, a lot of them are like Kid David's old school to me. I'm like that Kid David, like that guy's young, man. What are you talking about?
Well, that's the crazy thing about hip hop in general, right? It's like it's not like master choreographers are going teaching history and this and that. It's passed down in our bodies and through our dancing and somewhat through oral history and passing down. But a lot of this lineage still exists today. It's just people don't know about it, but they embody it. You know what I mean? So you can see it in the dancing today and the evolution of things. But yeah, you're right. It's like there's so much rich, important stuff that happened in the West Coast in the 90s, other places as well, of course.
Yeah,
but
dude. Yeah.
Living it and reminding ourselves of this is important, man. It's like
Right.
otherwise that stuff really disappears.
Yeah. So yeah, like and shout out to we have Flex from Bag of Tricks. He's watching right now. So they played a big influence, you know what I'm saying? And like, Gizmo and Bag of Tricks, you know what I mean? As far as like, Canada influencing us and vice versa and stuff like that. J Rock's in the house. What up? J Rock says, what up? All right. So let's talk about like your academic career. So how did that get started as far as like because like you basically like because I actually don't know. Like I just know that you wrote a book. I was like, whoa, you wrote a book? Like what the heck? So
yeah, I mean, again, long story. I'll try to keep it short, but we could build on certain things. But basically, like as I'm entering this world, and like meeting people and growing with the scene going, really the first kind of thing made me start thinking about the issue that the book and my academic career started around is this question of history. And like how that started was in 2000. I talk about this in the book a little bit, like Quality actually from Style.
Quality, yeah.
At the time, I wasn't really even that familiar and close to people from Stallman's. I was looking up to them, I had met Poe and he was living in LA. So he was definitely one of the first people I met actually. But anyways, long story short, we go to Vegas for a jam that Quality threw called Concrete Soul.
Okay, word.
And at this jam, he had invited the twins, legendary twins, N-word twins. Like he had invited them to the jam. They were judging the jam actually. I think Storm was there as well. I can't remember who else was judging. I know like Wiggles and there was just a Mr. Freeze. There was a bunch of people there, but it was like one of the things that was like shocking was like, oh, these early B-boys. And they had like a panel and they're talking. And, I had done a little bit again. I used to take all that stuff serious about know your roots. And this is a culture, not just a dance. And it's connected to this broader movement. Like that actually gave more meaning to what we were doing to me too. And it was like stuff, that made me totally look at rap music, everything a little different. So I was like paying attention to the panel and like everything the twins were saying was kind of like contradicting a lot of the stuff, I had heard before that, you know what I mean? So I don't really remember what like exactly everything they were saying, but it had to do with like the age of people, like the style. They were talking about like Herc and early parties, and it was just fascinating. I mean, it wasn't really about like debunking anything. It just I left that feeling like there's a whole history that's super inspiring, and there's like a power to it that seems hidden, And I was like the first time I got a glimpse of it. So after that, I really try to make a point to like find out more about the history, And then Fresh as Kids came out maybe a year after that. That also was another turning point. I remember actually seeing Fresh as Kids at B-Boy Summit in '99. Before I saw the they had like I could be wrong. This might be my memory playing with me.
Was that UCLA? Was it that one?
UCLA? It was UCLA, yeah. And there was like a room where it was playing. It was just a room where they were like playing.
Before it released. This is before it released.
This is before it released. And Asia could maybe correct me, but if you look at Fresh as Kids, it's obviously a lot of the footage was shot way before it got released, you know?
Yeah.
So I almost feel like they were like debuting it there or doing like a practice promo thing and the first kind of thing. And I didn't, you know, I was there to dance, so I wasn't really going to I would pop in the panels every time to just get a change of pace. And I remember being in that room where they were watching it, and I just remember the imagery of it and like seeing Phase 2 sitting next to Crazy Legs, and you could see Phase 2 just like dropping knowledge and stuff like that. You see the twins, you see Herc, and obviously, of course, like JoJo, Track, and all the history behind it. So I was like, oh, this is crazy. So then when it came out, we saw it at the premiere in LA.
Oh, word.
In the theater and stuff. So that was also like, that was like really when I first watched it and took in the information.
Right.
And that was also a turning point, man. A lot of the stuff being dropped there was revelatory. So I would make it a point to just do my best. It was hard though, bro, because there wasn't that much info, you know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
But that's kind of like my beginnings. And then long story short, in 2015, I was given a chance to do like academic work through a PhD program in Canada at York University in Toronto through a professor named Mary Fogarty, who's a big girl. Yeah. So she, I mean, there's a long story short how we met and interacted, but through her, you know, she kind of encouraged me to pursue like this research more in depth. And like when I got that opportunity, now I had the time and resources, and you know, you get training and different methodologies and stuff like that. And it was close to New York, so I started researching this topic of like the early days of breaking there, and then that turned into a dissertation, which like later got turned into a book. So
crazy. That's crazy. You mentioned Mary because I know she got a lot of flack when she was judging like one of the qualifiers for like I don't know, this is prior WD or no, this is the WDSF and stuff like that. Flex knows what's up. like Flex knows what's up. But yeah, I know. I remember she got a lot of flack. And then, like, you know, she actually jumped on a show live with me, Prevail, Dibs, and she started breaking down her credentials. And we're like, oh, well, actually, you probably know more about breaking than most average B-boy or B-girl. You know what I mean? Like, straight up, like, I was at Ken Swift's house, and I was doing research. I was like, wait, or like, Ken Swift stayed over and was doing research, and we're like, oh, okay, hold on. All right, she's not just whatever, you know what I mean? Like, she actually knows what she's talking about.
Mary gets down. I mean, she dances. We used to session as well. And at that judges thing, like, she didn't really showcase. She just kind of did a quick. And I think, you know, who knows the background story to that? Like, I mean, but we definitely, a bunch of people are like doing judges showcases where they just go like peace, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Some judges don't even do showcases now.
Yeah. But that's crazy. Yeah. But it's just funny how, like, you know, like just like with DJ Renegade, like people judge that guy. It's like, oh, he doesn't dance. And yeah, Michael, but he knows more about the lineage and everything, and even modern, you know, just the modern like styles and even like influences of what could be happening better than someone that's like who can dance really good, is high, and doesn't even care who you are. You know what I'm saying? So while they're judging you. Like, so it's just like, come on, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, does it always have to be like a premiere? Like, you know, just like some of the best dancers aren't the best teachers or the best judges. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, come on, yo. So, okay. So that's dope. So then you go from, you know, going to Toronto to do your studies and stuff like that. Who were some of the names that you were going to and visiting in New York and in around 2015?
Yeah. You know, well, I mean, the main person that became kind of like a mentor of mine is Phase 2.
Okay.
But we brought the twins out through, again, Mary's help and stuff like that to Toronto. They did a special talk at the school and like got down, and we got to interact with them and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, part of the thing about my research was also to show a lot of this information like kind of existed already. It was just not accessible. It existed.
Right.
And so like a lot of the stuff we were talking about, like late 90s, early 2000s, by the mid 2000s, mind you, like we fast forwarded up to 2015. I had been doing research like up before that throughout the whole time.
Yeah,
Again, it's
about
hard.
decades. This is about a decade of just research and stuff like that.
Yeah, like when the internet, like, well, obviously the internet was around, but social media, Facebooks, MySpace, these types of, I mean, I initially established contact with Face through MySpace back in the mid 2000s.
Okay.
He had a MySpace page. I messaged him. He became like one of the main people I would follow, like his interviews and things like that, because he was always dropping knowledge. But it's like people would ignore it. You know what I mean? There's books and things about early breaking from the 80s, like Steve Hager's book, and even Michael Holman's book, New York City Breakers, has information about the history. So I say all that to say, like, part of my research wasn't really based on interviews. It was based off these existing sources that people, for whatever reason, kind of ignored. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I interacted with DXT, Pee Wee Dance, Shaky Shake, Coco 144. Yeah. So I mean, and these interviews and interactions with those earlier kind of figures, it was like great because I had questions still, and it was like talking to them kind of was like those, kind of things I was really unsure about, or they provide a lot of clarification and insight through just talking with them. And some of them I got to see, like FaZe would do little things sometimes when we interacted. Nothing crazy, but still something, you know what I mean? And the twins got down when they were in Toronto. DXT still gets down. I didn't meet him in person, but he still dances,
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, yeah, you're the second person right now. Like last week, I had Quick Step, and he was saying exactly like when Breaking died. He was a graffiti writer, and he was like hanging out with Lee Cojones and Phase 2. And it seems like that. And I had a conversation with Nemesis as well, and he's like, "Yo, I was always close to Phase 2." So, but I was like, "Oh, okay, that's the connector." Like, you know what I mean? Like, he seems like obviously he was around, and he was the one breaking down that kind of the connection between the hurt parties and like to now. You know what I mean? And that's pretty interesting because even like like okay, and we're gonna get to my question soon, and then the chat. I don't know. Seems the chat's pretty well behaved right now, so I'm happy about that. But so yeah, so like, I think I don't know, yeah, because I know like so the guys that seem to do the research is yourself, Norrad, and Pluto. Like I go to you guys really, if anything. I'm just more of the guy that's like, well, let me get it on film. Like let me get the interview, right? Like that's my thing. Like later, you know what I mean? Because I'm not much of a reader. I just like I'm a visual guy. So it's just like, well, let's break bread and talk stories. So, for the past, 2 years, it's been like going back to YouTube because I was doing it on Facebook and no one goes on Facebook no more. So I was like, okay, let me go on YouTube. And that's when like things happen. Like, you know, talking to Charlie again 2 years ago, talking to Sasa, talking to Track, and getting all their stories. And yeah, there's gonna be disagreements about a bunch of stuff, right? And Pluto was kind of like there to kind of help navigate some of this stuff because for me it's just off the head. I don't write anything down, which I should write stuff down. That's why I'm glad there's a book. I can actually read it and stuff. So when I was going through the book and I don't want to talk about, but I might as well talk about because it's something. As I got into YouTube, this is when all this controversy starts happening about and it seems like during the pandemic, it seemed to like increase as far as like who did it first. Is it foundational Black Americans, Puerto Ricans together, 50-50, 60-40, 80-20? I don't know. They've used my channel for a bunch of stuff. And they've as far as like FB, the Foundational Black Americans, they seem to use your book as a reference because there's a lot of stuff that's like one was it's kind of cool because no one cared about this stuff before. Like no one gave a shit. Now that there's an argument, there's people actually researching about breaking that don't care about breaking. They just want to prove a point. So, but I do notice there's something in here that's interesting. It's a word that you use, which is erasure or again
invisibilization. It's a weird word.
Yeah, invisibilization. I'm like, so for me, I never really thought about it like that. You know what I mean? I just thought a dope b-boy is a dope b-boy. I don't really care what ethnicity or nationality they are. So it never really came to like in my forefront. But then in the book, it seems like the one of the themes is like there's this erasure going on. So my question is like, are you implying that it was like on purpose, or like, yeah, what's the intent when when you're using erasure?
I mean, that term, okay, it's like it's a description of what's occurring, not really
Okay.
the motivation behind it. We can talk about the causes behind it, but it's like an observation that this is occurring. And
Okay.
actually, like, it's more focused on, there's two tiers of it. One is scholarship, like
Okay.
books, articles, and things like that written about hip hop. How are they talking about this early history?
Mhm.
That's my main focus. Mind you, I'm in academia. I'm like conversating with like that whole academic
Right.
community.
Yeah.
That's and that term, it comes from a scholar named Brenda Dixon Gottschalk, who talks about African aesthetics in dance in general, not hip hop,
Mhm.
and how there's a lot of influences of African American and African traditions and aesthetics in modern dance, in dance and
Mhm.
society, and that get erased. So she's talking about this like historically, and I mention it in that context of how these influences exist, but yet they get erased. They get put to the side by scholarship, namely, and in the
Okay.
community, right? In the community, I also think there has been a process. I don't think it's a malicious process per se, but it could be. I mean, I think that that's not the focus of my research, the causes behind it. I have my thoughts on it, but
Okay.
the observation is the following. Like,
Okay.
I seen the twins at Concrete Soul, and
Mhm.
then DXT at judging an event in Las Vegas, the Mr. Freeze's big
Yeah.
event
Yeah.
that you,
UBC. UBC. Yeah. UBC.
out of those two occasions when I was writing my PhD, mind you, like the freestyle session thing where you introduced the early practitioners, that happened after. So
Yeah.
like at the point that I was writing, I could only think of two events where
Mm.
early practitioners from this generation were invited.
Right.
So that says something, bro. You know what I mean? That says like, why don't we connect with this? If we're all about knowing our history, knowing our roots, let's know all of it, you know? And so that's an observation of an occurrence. And like in scholarship, so how people talk about FBA using this as a tool, there's a lot of scholarship in the late 90s, I mean late 80s, early 90s by people like Juan Flores, Raquel Rivera, other scholars who are trying to argue for like the Latino roots in hip hop, because they saw like rap music, like putting Latinos to the side and saying there's a black thing, rap music, not
Yeah.
hip hop.
Yeah.
And they were trying to argue that we're part of this too. They didn't really care about breaking, but that was their way of arguing that no, we've been part of this since day one because we dominated breaking. And what was being written in books is that yes, African Americans did this for a couple years and then they left it, and it's really a Latino creation. This is written, you could read it, you know.
Mhm.
So that's a problem to me, you know what I'm saying? Because especially academics should be serious, should be studying, should be presenting facts and evidence, and they're kind of obscuring the whole beginning stages of things. And then that gets bled into documentaries and societal conversation overall. And it's not strange why people are now surprised to hear, and like there's conflict over this now. I think this is why academics especially have a huge responsibility to like be mindful of these issues and try to not have an agenda, to just
Mhm.
gather information without an agenda. And me, bro,
Mhm.
I feel like you. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Honestly.
the
Honestly.
pioneers feel like you too. It's not an exclusionary thing. It's just like give props to people who did whatever. Everybody could Herc, Phase, uh, Flash, they're none of the pioneers say like, nah, this is, you're not a part of this. But they also say, don't erase us. Like we did our thing, you know what I mean? Like we set the groundwork, and we don't want to be forgotten for all this stuff that we helped. If it wasn't for us, there would be none of this, and that's true. You know, just like if there was no '90s generation, there wouldn't be the current
Dude, that's
scene.
and that's and like again, and that's what I'm saying. It's like we haven't barely touched, like no one has even touched the '90s just yet. Like I'm kind of slowly, I barely touched the '80s as far as research. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, so it's just like right now, it's like I said, I'm still on my '70s kick. Like barely the '80s. Like Quickstep is kind of '80s, but it's a little bit more late '80s. Let alone like I'm talking like I still have to. Like I talked to K1 before, but I want to talk to more definitely. I got to talk to Fast Break, so that he's kind of that transition from '70s to '80s and stuff like that. And that's interesting that you brought that up, because I'm new to like academia and stuff like that, as far as like what they're saying in text, right? Because it seems like this, and this is a conversation that like I want your opinion on. Because so, for instance, I was introduced to rocking like 20 years ago, right? Like about 20 years ago. It's almost the same thing, right? Like, okay, did it come from 1969 Brooklyn? And then all of a sudden, like, oh, there's a guy that's from the Bronx that, Rubber Band's actually from the Bronx, who's like the rocker guy, right? And even within rocking, there's like, well, other people called it burning. And then there's another style. There's like the more Frank Rojas, Papa Rojas, like more like, like kind of more like this. It looks a little bit more like disco dancing. And then there's the Outlaws that actually like kicked each other in the chest, like physically. Like, and then on top of that, Bronx and then Brooklyn. You know what I mean? So it's just like, and there's that. So I was already like, who's telling the truth? Because everyone was saying I was the best. No one could take me out. When you're going up against that many people, from slope style to Bushwick style, and this is just rocking. We're not even talking breaking yet. We're just talking rocking. Just, you know what I mean? That within itself, it's chaotic. And then like I even had Davey D, who's been doing journalism and hip hop forever, who's originally from New York, and they say, "Oh, the Canarsie kick dance. That's like rocking." Like what is so so there's this thing, right? Like, and this is like for those who are new to like trying to dig, just to prove a point, versus like we just want to know because we want to know who to give props to. You know what I'm saying? So like so how do you feel about? My question is, how do you feel about like? I'm just gonna say this rock burn style that happened in New York, that it seemed like it was in all boroughs. It wasn't just one. It just seemed like every borough had their own style of burning and rocking. And that influenced in the different, because at the same time, New York is so big, man. Like, the Bronx is San Francisco is as big as the Bronx, and that's one borough versus five. You know what I'm saying? What's your opinion on that? The influence of like rocking or burning, or if they, from your research, did they cross each other at all? Like it seemed, you know what I mean?
Well,
The
we could talk about this, and I think I could be educated on all this stuff too. I think people need to have dialogue and serious kind of critical kind of discussion. But let's start with one thing, right? The music. So what do rockers dance to? What tracks?
Right.
They're dancing to Herc's playlist, basically. And some of those things that Herc played existed prior to him. He picked it up from going to clubs like Melting Pot and Dennis Coffee, but then like Shaft in Africa, Voodoo, like Love the Life You Live, Apache. These are even in a way like Give It Up, Turn It Loose, the live version. That was like Herc's anthem. That was the first B-boy anthem. And so these are the tracks that made him popular. Herc wasn't a technician like DJing, cutting up anything. He provided obscure music for dancers.
Right.
So if this was playing everywhere, Herc wouldn't have ever made a name for himself. It was the fact that nobody was playing it that people came to his party. Like, that's it. That's really the only reason. So there's a problem when people say like, oh, it's everywhere. Then that doesn't make sense, bro. You know what I mean? And then the other question is like when we're talking about rocking, right? Like the dance aesthetics. Let's say squat drops and what burn. I mean, I'm not. Again, that's why I say we should have a discussion. But if you watch every early b-boy, for even Herc, you can see him in Freshest Kids doing like a little squat drop type of thing that looks like a jerk, basically. And from my interviews and conversations with people, some people say like what people call jerks was like kind of like a double squat drop, like like So the Twins, DXT, all the early b-boys do like a squat drop type of drop. That was part of the dance, So my point I say to say this, I think there's a lot of problems with how that whole rocking history gets, even amongst people. They'll be like, how old are you, bro? Like you're talking all this stuff, like you created this or you're this. How, when were you born? You know what I mean? Oh, you were born in like 63. So how could you be around in 73? Well, you're 10 years old.
Yeah, no, I think we know who we're talking about when you're talking about this.
I'm talking about a lot of people. I'm not talking about one. So I think this is an issue. Like people don't ask these questions, and then it's understandable because these are OGs, they're dope dancers, and we want to show them props. We don't want to like criticize them, and I give them utmost respect. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about history, let's tell our stories and not, if we're going before our time, then that's where research comes in, and these type of critical sifting and filtering has to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's the thing, like,
And not to cut you off, but just one other point I want to make. I think there's an interesting history that hasn't been discovered about a lot of that.
sure.
They're like talking to Coco 144 and people, like there was a lot of writers that were intermingling from people from the Bronx, like FaZe and Lava from Manhattan, and you had some of these cats were dancers, and they're writing and they're going to clubs and writing, and they were intermingling. So I have a curiosity about that. Like I think maybe some of these things kind of got dispersed like that. I mean, definitely FaZe will talk about that. I mean, FaZe,
Right, yeah. And that's the thing. That's a shame that FaZe is not around anymore, because like in the time we need FaZe to talk, like, yo, he's not around. You know what I mean?
For sure. But FaZe, like for example, in like '93, he wrote an article that like appeared in a hip hop magazine in like Europe. It's all about dance, and it's all about like these things that rocking and types of things people call. And like you could hear the b-boys in the Bronx, they all talk about burning.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of question marks about what people are claiming about other boroughs and this and that merits more research and conversation. And I think these types of things, like when did you start dancing? Because by the late 70s, 77,
Yeah.
hip hop was spreading, Cool Herc's
Right.
influence was spreading, and discos were also adopting these styles of music.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And that's the thing, like, and this is just a name to like drop. This guy's his name is Chuck DeJesus. This guy was originally from the Bronx, but moved to Brooklyn. It seemed like he was a big influence. At the same time, like I said, because there was that difference between the disco DJs and what Herc was doing. Herc was doing something specific, because even with DJ Hollywood, he was more of a disco DJ, but would rhyme on top of like he would do rhymes on top of disco. And you go to the his place, can't wear no sneakers. Like, it's nice shoes, right? Suits and nice shoes, right? There's the difference between what they said, like what Charlie talked about. Like, he talked about, no, we got in with sneakers. We did. Even Doug were like, I would have to paint my shoes to make it look like nice shoes, even though they were sneakers. Like stuff like that. That to me, that's really interesting to like, and like I said, this is something that we have to go deeper on, because like, yeah, like you talked about, there's certain moves like you call the pin drop in the book, but like Sasa would call that, the umbrella. But then when Ken Swift learned it, he learned it as the parachute, which is all just like, and even Dancing Doug was like, we used to do that in front of the train and spin up when the train's going by, and we almost used to kill ourselves doing that. So you know what I mean? So I feel like this is the stuff that like, okay, to contrary, because then you have Spy, who's like, yo, him and Shorty started creating these like footwork patterns. It seemed like it was at the same time, even though these paths weren't crossing. It seemed like, because like even Sasa was like 1975. That's when I battled Trixie. It was like 1975. I had Voodoo Non song. I forgot what Trixie was dancing. And because at the time, it was like, oh, there was no merry-go-round. It was just like, this was my song and this was Trixie's song. And then we would go at it. You know what I mean? And, and then his thing was like, Trixie pulled out the dildo. I cut it. And then I did. And him being double jointed, he started going to the floor and everyone was like, what is that? Right? You know what I'm saying? So what do you think about that story? Like, crews like TVB, crews like CC, the Mexicans, do you, like, Smokey and the Smokatrons, like, when you hear these names, and obviously with those guys, they were like more going to the parties and this and that, but it's like these other cats, like the Star Traveling Rocks, weren't necessarily going to those parties. You feel like they were developing their own scene separate, and just when it started to be outside, it was like, that's when you start to mingle with each other. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, like taking TBB for example, and props to Batch and Abby and them, like they talk about a dude named TT Rock, who's a black kid who was in the mix, influenced them, a lot of, I mean, I don't know the Spy story that well, but I've definitely seen stuff on record in the past talking about Zulu King's influence. I mean, a lot of that generation was influenced by Zulu Kings, right? Like And you have cats like Swain and Chopper and these names that were doing the first head spins, Robbie Rob,
Robbie Rob,
chair.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like these are African American, and I think at that stage that's when things were coming together, you know. And this is also part of the research is like all Kenny, JoJo, you know, Batch, these cats, props to them, a bomb five. Like they talk about who their influences were. K1 at Shaky Shake, there's a connection there, you know.
Mhm.
And that's a beautiful thing. Is a story of how people came together and then added to the dance. And I think their contributions, like you're asking me what I think of them, like I think they made major contributions to the dance as far as the TBBs, the Rocksteadies, the you know CC crew, of course. Like, but let's listen to their stories and see what it is. You know what I mean? I think that's another reason. Like, why are they talking about? Like, why is there this narrative so much about like a Moreno thing, a Cocolo thing, a black thing? If rocking was doing it already, you know, there's something to be said about what was happening that was taking people by surprise and drawing them in. And then when they got in, they were welcome. Basically, I mean, there's conflicts and things like that. It wasn't just pure utopia type of thing. On both sides, there was issues, but it was a beautiful thing about how communities came together through the dance. That wasn't the norm back then. As contrary to like myths out there, it wasn't the norm that everybody was getting along in the same neighborhood. They might have lived together, but there's a bunch of people on record talking about having problems getting involved, vice versa. Like Disco Wiz, he's Grandmaster Kaz DJ. His biography talks a lot about that, and he presents him being down with Kaz as even before Kaz ever spoke publicly about like ethnic things. I know people pull up his Vlad TV interview, but you could just read Disco Wiz's biography. He wrote a book, and in it he talks about how me and Kaz were setting a trend for like communities coming together and overcoming bullshit, basically. And he talks specific stories about what he went through and what Kaz went through and that kind of thing. Kay Slay talks about things happening in Spanish Harlem. Fable talks about that in Jeff Chang's book. You could read Jeff Chang's book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, and find Fable's quote. There's a whole quote about like it wasn't easy, you know.
A lot of those original guys do not like Jeff Chang's book. Like
Well,
Tariq Nasheed was like, you know, it's funny because Tariq Nasheed was like, that guy's an agent. I was like, dude, Jeff Chang's been to my house. He's been to this house. He's not an agent. He's a kid that was working for Def Jam from Hawaii that interviewed a bunch of people and wanted to make a book. 20 years ago.
Props to Jeff Chang. When that book came out, you know, it was like he made it a point to talk about the history. I have my issues with it. I'm not a fan of that book per se, like, but I give props to him because he did something, you know what I mean? He brought attention.
That's what I'm saying. Or what since then, when's like this is like this book is the closest thing I think next to that. And just like because there's always new research coming out. And it's not like the internet, right? A book is like takes a process. Like how long how long did it take you to make this book?
Well, I mean, I did my PhD. I started it in 2015, and then you know, I didn't write it in that period, but probably around like 2017-ish, I'm starting to write, and I finished in 2021.
Yeah,
the PhD, and then the book came out last year, like 2023. So
that's
between 2021 and 2023, I'm working on the book like part.
This is why I like online interviews because I don't have to wait for a book. You know what I'm saying? Because like we can have discussions now. You know what I mean? But yeah.
But I don't want to discount like the reason I mentioned you there, bro, is because like that interview with Charlie Rock alone was like a major contribution to this history and like other stuff you do as well, like and other people. I mean, you mentioned Norin Rad and other people, but also like Pete Nice done a lot of digging into the history. There's a dude named Sure Shot LaRock. Props to him. Troy L. Smith. There's a lot of people that you guys are the researchers for our community. You know what I'm saying? Like all of us combined like that. So it's not about like academia, you know, it's like the community is doing this research too.
I mean, here's the thing that does out of all of us, right? Like, you know, yourself, Sir Norn Red, Pluto, we're all dancers. You know what I mean? That's the main difference. Like Jaquan's dope. Like these guys, all these guys are dope. But Jeff Chain's cool. But we're the dancers. Like, there's a reason why we care about it so much. Because we're practitioners. And I gotta give a shout out because I saw that you did a panel with this like, I just discovered Monsell Durden. Like I just discovered him, and that guy to me is like, holy crap! Like for those people that really want to know what's up, like Monsell Durden is the guy who could trace back, like just this is his thing of like tracing back, the Kid and Play to the Charlie Rock, to the Mashed Potato, to the Charleston, to the Carolina, to the African slave trade, to the tribe in Africa. Like, what the hell? Like that thorough is insane to me. You know what I mean? That thorough is insane to me. And I think that's the dope part. You know what I mean? It's like and now like, everyone even like Davey D's starting to like come back and just kind of like we've been about doing this research, or at least these guys have been about doing the research and documenting and type of stuff like that. I just don't like the fact they attacked Jeff Chang because, like I said, he just wanted to know. He was just curious, and of course, and this book's already 20 years old, and him and Davey D just kind of updated it recently. Like they reissued it with a few things, with a few touches here and there. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Yeah, but I think the dialogue is important. Like if I'm saying something wrong, you know what I mean, factually or whatever, let me get educated. That's so, and that's what it's about. It's like knowledge doesn't happen individually; it happens through community. It happens through conversation and dialogue and sword sharpening swords and stuff. But without agendas, the agendas and people aren't willing to listen and think. It's like, how can you have a conversation? You know what I mean?
Right. No, I hear it. No, that's the thing. All right. So, real quick before we go to the chat, because they're already going crazy. They're already attacking each other. You boomers are attacking each other because I know none of y'all are under 35. I was ready for this because I didn't think it was gonna happen. I was like, oh, the chat's kind of cool, but chilling right now. And now that's like everyone's like already attacking each other. Before we engage in the chat, we're gonna pull up a little video of Midus dancing himself. And here's the thing too, man. Like, there was this, okay, real quick for the, what? Let me share this now because those in the chat arguing, you guys aren't dancers, so let's educate them real quick. So there was a whole thing about like early 90s was like when Rocksteady came was like, you're breaking wrong, right? And then Air Force and LA Breakers like, now you can't tell us how to break. We were influenced by y'all anyway. Then that kind of transferred into like, what you guys are doing as far as like, like the God Ups movement, right? Like, well, basically, you guys are basically saying you guys aren't even top rocking. Like you guys are just doing this, and you're doing your footwork or whatever, whatnot. And then that became kind of like the somewhat rivalry as well, right? And then even from you guys, like I would even put like Circle Fire, you guys, and then you guys like with Droogy's help, you guys started to like. The freak shows and the circus runaways are like kind of love. They looked up to you guys, right? Like they were like, you guys are doing something different. So we're with that, with the Elsewhere's video and stuff like that. So just for, reference for people to understand like how this man dances and not just his research. Like let's watch some stuff from Midus's clip right here. Let's go. And you know what? Trick copyright. Okay, so you know what's crazy is like I was reacting to one of the Red Bull, the USA Red Bull finals, and I was like, I swear to God, man, you know, this is like every person in every round was just to this to whatever. I'm like, damn, y'all just played that move out. I was like, yeah, and then to watch it's like, yeah, you were definitely part of that movement of taking it to the next level. Um, so yeah, just what for the chat, I want everyone to kind of see what you know what you because that you see it now, like it's straight up, like you see this is like the I would say it's the main transition I see most b boys and b girls do right now to whatever they do a hand thread to 90 to footwork to you know what I'm saying, um, and you could definitely see like I'm just really surprised that you didn't start out as a freestyle dancer at first. Because like for me, it's like opposite. Everyone expected me to be a beat. It's like no, I started actually freestyle hip hop first before. Like you know, Buddha Stretch and them were like you know I was like in the same crew as Mikey Disco in '91. Like we were like we actually started together. You know what I'm saying? Like so, but I just went. And it's funny because I went super traditional way, right? Um, like, how do you feel about like that being, you know, you doing this style for so long, and now this is like become the norm? How do you feel about that?
Um, Thank you, but I mean, I don't know if I would put it in those words, but like, I think it's a beautiful thing. Like, I was inspired by all the names I mentioned: Stuntman, Drunk
Right,
Funk,
right.
Cut. They were inspired by Kenny, Flo,
Yeah.
other people, and you have Bag of Tricks in Toronto
That
doing
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're doing this like as well too.
obviously Scott Elements, J Rock, Poe, Crumbs. I was like, these are like my heroes growing up. You know,
Right.
seeing them. I mean, I was closer to the 101 abstract people in LA, abstract flavor folks like in LA, and there's a lot of Shrimp Wu was like the man. I mean, he was like a dancer down with another crew. There was a crew called Freak Show, not the Freak Show people know. There's
Word.
another, yeah. And Skywalker, if people know Skywalker, he's like this popper. He's in Detours as well. Him
Okay.
and bro, Shrimp Wu was doing some ill, crazy stuff, like super futuristic, and like, oh, him and G Wiz came to a practice in my neighborhood, and I saw him like pretty early on, and I was just like, what? And I saw Stuntman and Cusser early on, and I was just like, right away gravitating towards that. So when people try to give me props, I'm like, man, I gotta give props to the people who influenced me. I did my thing with it, you know, I kind of made it, did certain stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's not actually not just breaking. Again, going back to like us as a community, the breaking scene, like we influence other people because I see certain specific moves. I feel like outside of threading, I mean, there's like certain things I do that I see other dance styles do now.
Mhm.
And like at the time, it was like my signature. I was looking around trying to make sure nobody else did it in freestyling, breaking, anything. And then now I see people do that in other dance styles. And I think people were influenced off the community, you know what I mean? And like it branched out to other things. And that's a beautiful. I think I see flexors and people doing turfers doing
Yeah,
crazy.
surfers. Yeah, dude. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying they got it from me or anything like that. I'm just saying I see it and I'm like, damn, like that's dope. I could have never thought of that. So if you're asking me what I think, whether in breaking or outside other styles, I think it's beautiful, man, that people are doing ill stuff. I just hope they just keep doing ill stuff and keep innovating, creating, and yeah, adding to it and not regurgitating stuff. You know.
All right, so we're about a minute. I mean, a minute, an hour and 19 in. So this is what I'm going to do because now the chat's attacking each other. It's just like, I'm right. So I'm right. You're wrong. You're all boomers. I'm going to say it again. It's my channel. Guess what I get to say? Boomers. Now, for those who don't understand when I say boomers, even though your parents are boomers, Gen Z called old people boomers. Even though I'm Gen X, we call you boomers. And when you guys argue about like who did it first, it's some boomer shit. So I'm allow 4 questions from the chat for Midus. And after that, we're gonna talk about what's coming up in this month. You know what I mean? And then then we'll end the show. So we're that ready for the chat, Midus?
Yeah, man. No
All right, who has a question for Midas, and it could. This is where unfiltered now. You can get as crazy as you want. I'll let Midas handle it, but we'll bring it up. But shout out, but before we do that, shout out to Manny Fernandez, Style Elements. Of course, Rocksteady was better. It was never advanced. Anybody questions? I hear a lot of arguments, but you better ask your question now. I'm gonna give you guys about 1 minute to ask the question, or we're gonna move on. Versus you guys arguing against each other. But while you're doing that, see a lot of arguments. I don't care. I don't care about you boomers. Ask a question. It's my show. It's guess what? It's my channel. I get to talk smack to all y'all. I'm gonna shout out to my friends. So if anybody got a question for Midas, ask
real
right
quick,
now. I'm not. Huh?
while people are gathering questions and stuff, I mean, I just want to say, man, like, hopefully, like people in the community, practitioners especially, they keep that community in mind, even if they have disagreements. Like we're
Oh
not each
yeah.
other's enemy.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
so it's kind of sad to see like division and things like that. Especially, again, I want to reiterate, there is no pioneer of this culture that promoting division, an actual bona fide pioneer that I know of. From the Hercs to the Phases to the, run down the list, like to the Kazes, to the Disco Whizzes, to the Rockstead, the Kennys. What, like, let's pay attention to their voice, and what do they have to say about these issues, type of thing. And
Some of them don't
remember
like
to
it.
keep
I
your
know.
eyes on the prize.
I know. I talked to Charlie Rock. He don't like it. He's like, this is stupid.
Shout out to Charlie Rock.
You know what I mean? Sasa's like, I don't know. He doesn't care.
And that's a beautiful thing. That's the spirit of the culture.
Yeah. Kevin Diaz, let's hear about Midas' personal journey through dance. The Detours DVD was so inspiring in my development and how I move. I'd love to hear more about him. We just kind of did, but I just wanted to put your chat up because there's a lot arguing. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, real quick, again, while people gather argumentative questions or whatever, Detours, I do want to give a quick shout out to Rob Zilla, Elsewhere Cujo. That was a project we came together and made in the late 90s, early 2000s, and came out in like 2002, basically early 2002. And yeah, people could YouTube that and check out footage of it. It's mostly on YouTube now. Detours. Yeah, big shout out to my brothers, Elsewhere Cujo, Rob Zilla.
Yeah, Elsewhere. He's working a lot industry stuff still.
Yeah, Elsewhere does his thing, man. He's multi-talented, so he still dances too. I was just out. He's. I mean, I don't want to give it this. I don't know. People want to say where I was kicking it with him in the spring. You know what I mean? And he's doing his thing, dancing as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if the other thing was copyright, but
Right.
I'm just gonna put a little bit of you can look up the clip right here for the Detours video. So right here, if you want to check it out, this is what we're talking about. They were doing stuff that ahead of the time, really. If you think about it, because now it's still these moves are definitely being done now, and not just in breaking, but just in different types of dances. That being all styles, flexing, turfing, breaking, house dance, hip hop dance. You know what I'm saying? All right. No one has questions for everyone's just arguing. No one has questions for Midas. They're not even paying attention. Come on, he's right here. He wrote the book that you guys use. Ask him a question. All right, here we go. Dr. Derek from Urban Exegesis asks. Here's my question. You said in your book that Puerto Ricans did not come on the scene until a decade later. When did Puerto Ricans come on the scene? When? When did Puerto Ricans come on the scene?
Well, I mean, it's not really me saying it, I'm not in a position to say it. I'm quoting practitioners,
Okay.
So pretty much I don't know of it's a consensus.
Who actually answered that question? Who's the practitioner? Who are you quoting when you say that?
Well, yeah, let me it's like people talk about, the OGs don't agree. let's not even talk to like African American practitioners. Wiggles, Legs, Track, Ken Swift, Fable, all these pioneers we look up to, JoJo, Batch. Uh, I mean, I can't think of an exception to it. Actually, they're all on record talking about the African American beginnings of the dance. You know, like referring to it. So I'm noticing that and going, let me dig into it. Then I talk to African Americans. They all kind of, not in a exclusionary way. This is their personal experience. They know the narrative, for example, like African American practitioners know that like the narrative out there was like Latinos dominated breaking and all this stuff. And they respect the contributions. They're all on record giving props to them. But they're also know and experience a like like just like you have your experience of vibing out in as a freestyle dancer and then building with grams and all this stuff. Whatever the narrative is on TV and books, that's your story. So it's hard to go against that. Mm-hmm. So they, not in a desire to exclude, but this is their experience where it was mostly African Americans, like in the early days. This is not really a dispute that I know of, So when did they come on the scene? I mean, it's hard to pinpoint, like on this date, August 19th, 1978 or whatever. But it's like the late 70s, like 77, 78 seems like when there was more cross-pollination. Basically, when these parties started coming outside, when more DJs started coming around. So you had like Herc dominating the scene, and then you had like Flash in the mix. Then you had, Bam and them, Zulu coming around, basically around 76, 77. But after that, more DJs started emerging and started throwing jams outside. And that seems like the impetus for other people getting involved in the culture.
Okay. So back to the chat, because you guys are cussing at me. You saying I'm biased, but when I was asking about the question, all you guys were arguing with each other and you didn't ask a question. And if you would have tuned in the very beginning of the show, and you can rewind that, I said, let's hear Midus's history first before I go to the chat. And once I asked the chat, y'all was arguing. That was the first question that came up, really. When I said, hey, so boomers, pay attention. It's called timestamping. You guys don't know how to timestamp. I said, ask your questions now. I said 4 questions. That was 1. There's 3 more to go, and then we're going to wrap it up. So don't call me biased. That was the first actual question I had. You guys were just too busy arguing. There's another question. I'm going to skip that question and wait for y'all question. Since you say I'm biased. Okay, here we go. Supreme Dap talking smack. Wait, don't answer, Midus. You weren't paying attention. You're too busy arguing online. I said 4 questions and we're going to wrap it up. This is the second question. There's going to be 2 more. All right, go ahead, Midus.
So did Phase 2 say there were B-boys at the Plaza Tunnel? I mean, again, even with Phase, like we had a close relationship, but he has spoken about a lot of things. They're on record. You could like just Google it and find out. Like there's for example, an interview with Adam Mansbach and Phase, like way before I started really building with them. And he talks about some stuff. But so to answer that question though, first of all, the term B-boys, like this is me channeling Phase and what he would say, Phase comes from before the advent of the Twins and Clark Kent and James Bond and the people that were associated. The term B-boys, Herc applied it to the dancers that were down with him. And so it's kind of like a crew. So, but people would go to Herc's parties, hear him shout out B-boys and are you ready, whatever. And they would think it was just in reference to the dance. So it kind of just spread and became the name for practitioners overall. But Phase comes before that. So he sees the name B-boys as a generational thing. He wouldn't call himself a B-boy per se because of that. But he says we're inextricably linked because the stuff they were doing, they were influenced off our generation and what we were doing. So to answer the question, he wouldn't say B-boys would be at Plaza Tunnel, but people were doing the drop or the pin drop or whatever name people want to give it, squat drop type things and freestyling and burning and breaking, at the Plaza Tunnel. But in a very, it's like writing, if you look at writing in the early 70s, it's not burners and wild style and all that yet, but you could see the people with, especially Phase, like with his hand style doing arrows and things like that. So you could see the progression to say, oh, like the 75 burners and bubble letters is the real writing and that other stuff doesn't matter is crazy, you know? There would be no Wild Style and bubble letters and things without FaZe, an innovator of a lot of those aesthetics, would be the first one to tell you without the writing that came before him and he picked up on and he added to, there would be no. That's why he was such a big advocate of history. Like these are things that help the culture to understand lessons and lineage. You know what I mean? So to answer the question, there are people doing what people refer to already as breaking. It's not, and it's the remnants of what we still do. Like, you know, everybody does those drops and things like that still to this day.
100. All right, JG, I have a question for Midas. See, this is how you ask, and then that's why I'll pay attention because you boomers don't know how to timestamp. And Rican, I will get to your question. Vix, I will get to your question. Let me let JG, since he asked politely the way you asked, because I got all everyone's attention. Because sit down class, I have to treat you guys like a kindergarten class because I did it right. My show, I get to be a dick face if I want to be a dick face. I'm not Dr. Cologne. He won't cuss. I cuss. You motherfuckers better behave or I won't get to the question. Don't call me biased because here's your thing. You have a question, JG, ask it now. And then I'm going to get to Vix, and Vix will be the last question because JG asked nicely. All right. So why do you just wait? That's not for Midas. JG, ask something for Midas. Stop answering for. All right. Someone else ask. Someone else ask. Someone else got. If there's, I'm gonna just go to Vix's question. You guys keep arguing with Dr. Derek, like, bro, like Midas is right here. He wrote the book. He wrote the book. You want to go argue with Dr. Derek? Go to his channel. If you want to ask Midas a question and you guys refer to his book, you better ask him now. Go to Vix. Okay. So don't think I'm biased, bro. Don't think I'm biased. Don't think I'm biased. I just put your name on the screen. Boomer. Learn how to timestamp, motherfucker. Bias my butt. This is how you ask a question. Question. Wait, before I go on. Hey, boomers, this is how you ask a question. It gets my attention because it says question with colons. Go for it. What's the most interesting thing phase 2 told about history of breaking?
Damn, that's a hard question to answer. You know, like it's like those one thing. It's hard to pick. What's your favorite album or whatever? Like, but I'll say a couple things as I think of them. I mean, you mentioned Nemesis earlier, and you mentioned Sasa and Trixie's battle, and the dildo coming out, and
yes, yo, they argue to this day about that still. Like, no, I burnt you. It's like, no, you got a dildo. I have to take away that, and I have to go down the floor. Like, it's great. It's great.
He told me that story too. So when I heard, I think Nemesis said that, and I was like, okay, yeah, he definitely was building with them.
Actually, he burned Dub first. Dub fell for it first.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. He was like, yo, I thought I got Trixie. All of a sudden, he pulled this dildo. It was over. That's the first time I really got burned.
But it's crazy to hear like people were pulling out things like that, and you know, getting animated and props and like I was like, what? Like I was like, did he throw the cock or he brought a dildo type of thing? And he was like, no, like a physical thing. And then on top of it, Sasa had scissors or some sort of cutting utensil and brought that out and knew that was gonna happen. And so so it just sounds crazy, you know what I mean? And I think FaZe was saying that like, and if Sasa is out there, he could correct this, of course. But that they were playing like a Jimmy Castor song. I think Sasa has talked about this too. And damn, I forget the name of it, but it like kind of described the whole scene. So he was painting a picture of it, and it was crazy to hear that. But I mean, one thing FaZe talks about that was crazy was Smokey. Like Smokey's B-boys were also dope. A dude named Johnny Cool or Little Johnny that talk about doing some like kind of flips and just some crazy like tornado type flips and dancing on point. Like, so you know, FaZe wouldn't really give props to many people, but he respected certain cats like that, you know, and to hear him talk about them was dope. And then just his story, you know, he talks about dancing with some other writers named Stitch, Cat 87. So that's what I'm saying. Like writers were going out dancing, you know what I mean? And this is a Manhattan Bronx kind of like connection. And Bass talks about like you know
That's
how
something
they
that
were.
no one really talks about, is that Manhattan Bronx connection. Because it seemed like, because even like, you know, because like, I mean, Manhattan's Manhattan. Like that's central. Like everyone's gonna go Manhattan because like that's a. But then there was that thing where the rockers would go to Manhattan, and then the b-boys would go to Manhattan, and there was just this central thing that it, like no one talked, like you know, Dancing Doug's from Harlem. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, and then of course Rock City's from Harlem. So it's just there's just this thing, Curse Blow. You know what I mean? Like these are the guys. So let's do. You know what? I'm being nice. There's gonna be. I'm gonna take these last questions, but you have to ask a question. You can't be arguing, because if you're arguing, it doesn't look like a question to me. Let's go to Running Man. Running Man, 1133. Do you think music is the key to determine what culture of people initiate the dance? I don't know what that means, but if you can answer it, go for it, Midus.
So yeah, I don't fully understand the question as well, but I think it's one of the keys for sure, a central thing. I mean, I don't think it's the only thing, but yeah, I mean, you can see the evolution of the culture through changes in the music for sure. Like the dance, you can see, like, you know, when you mentioned again the Trixie Salsa battle, and I mean, whether it's the merry-go-round or like the original merry-go-round wasn't cutting up breaks. It was like a playlist of just, and early breaks, if you listen to them to this day, they don't really have a break section. They have peaks, but it's not like you know, there's certain tracks that have like a break part, you know, and the rest of the track sucks kind of thing. And so you could kind of see the evolution of the culture, like when that real technical stuff of like controlling that emerged, because in the records that they were putting as like classics. But yeah, like even, you know, Give It Up, Turn It Loose, you know, Listen to Me, these songs, like people would dance the whole song and then get down. So like that shapes how the dance developed. And then later, as people started cutting up the song, it's like you don't really can't dance to the full song, you're just dancing the beats. So that actually changed. And now sometimes DJs like bam, so people are reacting to that as well, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I think that definitely matters. That can inform a lot of things. It's not the only thing, but one of the things. Different generations brought in new things. You know what I mean? Early, again, people were doing drops and coming back dancing, and then people extending the drops. It's like a lot of hands and feet movement. People weren't really. That's the whole thing of like, I think partly I read it as this. I don't know. But again, this is my take. Like when the twins talk about we didn't get dirty and all, it's because they're on their hands and feet. They weren't really putting the rest of their body on the floor like that per se. You know, again, there's exceptions. You drop and come back up. But later generations doing the neck move and chair freezes where you're using your head and different things like that. And you can see the evolution of just new generations taking it a step further, taking it a step further.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm a truth teacher. You answered this first part of the question, which was like Dr. Derek asked. But there is the second part of the question I want you to answer is how do you define breaking? Like, because this is, you know, your outlook in it.
Well, I mean, see, this is the thing. Any word you try to define is hard. You know, it's like, how do you define a table? You know what I mean? How do you define just any? You could pick any word. Like, you know, what is a book? You know, if I make a little thing like this, and is that a book or is it a notepad? So anything you try to define is difficult. We got to acknowledge that first of all. But with that said, to me, breaking starts with the meaning people put into that word and the what you know, it's a cultural context of that time period and how it developed and how it continues and the meaning we put into it as people, basically. So, you know, and then initially breaking was a term that meant doing something extreme. So when people were doing couples dancing or the latest party dance, people started going beyond that and just bugging out. And so that term meant, yo, they're breaking, they're going off, they're doing something out of the ordinary type of dance. And so at the time it was kind of freeform, but certain things went viral, like the pin drop became a phenomenon and everybody adapted it and did it their own way. And then see, so this is like later on drops and things, twins and others do salsa, and then got picked up, and then this is how the vocabulary formed. And we just kept adding on to it. Terminology, music went with it. Music is very key to it, you know. That's why like people bring up sometimes old footage of like Russian dancers or jazz dancers. They're doing the same movement, but it's not breaking, you know what I
It's
mean?
not. Oh, thank you, because myself said the same thing. It's not breaking because why? The music.
Yeah, but
I
you know,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. No, the music is key, and also like it's not to deny influences that, and that's part of the dance. It's people brought their culture into it, and when you know, there's like hustle, Latin hustle steps that we do in the dance and top rock and footwork type of things, and that's a beautiful thing. This dance allows that to happen, and so that African Americans were doing that, Latinos were doing that, other people around the world do that, and that's part of the dance too, I think. So I think you know, if you ask me what breaking is personally, if I defined it, had to define it at a basic level, there's a structure and blueprint that exists that partly was shaped by the music, but it's like this top rock, drop, footwork, floor move, freeze format that has developed that we all practitioners follow. Is much deeper than that though, because there's this vocabulary and music, and even sometimes people might have the vocabulary and have the steps all around. Like I'm thinking, like let's say like a studio dancer or a professional dancer could pick that up, but would we call them a b-boy or b-girl or breaker? Like not necessarily. There's also like a spirit that you could. It's a mood almost. Like you could feel it when you're around.
It's like lived in. It's like a lived in thing. It's like a lived in thing. Yeah, it's not just empty movements. All right. I'm gonna go to Manny, and then because J-Rock's like, I want to hear that one. All right, Manny asks, hand raised. Thank you, Manny. Thank you for being cordial. Thank you for being proper. Why did FaZe want to beat up the Wild Style directors? Ooh, good question. Ooh, Wild Style question.
Well, again, you know, like I'm talking a lot about FaZe, and I want to make clear, like he spoke for himself, and I'm a student of FaZe, like, and I respect FaZe so much because dude was like a man of integrity and principle, such an innovator in many realms, flyers, writing. I mean, he had a DJ crew called Wicked Wizards, which was actually one of the first like Latino DJ crews. Most of the people in that crew were Latino, so just IGT, you know, International Get Hit Times, like first writing magazine, first hip hop zine. So this dude was just like, I mean, an incredible person just overall. But he was also like accurate and truthful and stood on principles always. Even when he was wrong, he would not be afraid to admit it. He had like a towering presence, but he was like willing to build with anybody that was coming in with the right intentions, basically. So with Wild Style, you know, it's like his issue with it, which he's spoken about publicly as well, is you know, the Fab Five Freddy character, first of all, is named Fade. That character was part of the art movement and was like now in this hip hop scene as like a mover and shaker. That's basically FaZe's life that they put on there. You know what I mean? And some shady stuff happened behind the scenes behind that, you know, and FaZe expressed his unhappiness and was, you know, these people come in. I mean, Wild Style obviously is a good, you know, in the sense of it's a historic thing. You know, it has a lot of practitioners in there, but you know, the brother that made it, what's that dude's name that made that? Charlie Ahern. Yeah, Charlie Ahern. You know, he's like this art guy in downtown Manhattan coming into the scene. And this is something FaZe experienced a lot, where just people come in, don't respect the culture, you know, and like use it for whatever purposes, even if they think they might be good intention. And the way the culture was presented, he wasn't happy with. And when he voiced that, that's a lot of times people put FaZe aside because of that reason, because of the principles he upheld. When in fact, like the dude's saying important things that would help you out, you know, but the fact that he has a voice and is not just a yes man, let him, you know, that, you know, so he's spoken about that. And then just the way Wild Style is a horrible movie, like the plot, it's like unwatchable.
Acting is bad, you know, but you know, the moment is what everyone remembers.
What makes it good is just the people in it. Rocksteady, the MCs, you know, Fantastic Five and all that, the ending scene and Flash in the kitchen. It's like you don't really care about the movie, you know what I mean? So people revere it, but it's like, dude, what are we revering? Like we should be revering the people in it, not the movie. you know.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. And then like some of it is like outlandish, like basketball, and they're
Yeah,
battling. And
that's true. Yeah.
days would clown that, you know, and he
Yeah.
wasn't a fan of that. It's like you're making it look like a mockery, you know, when this is a important movement and culture.
All right, I'm gonna take the last three questions and then we gotta wrap it up. Oh dang. Dang it, you guys. Now there's more questions. And then you're gonna be like, oh, Propo's biased. Bro, like I want, I'm a boomer too. I want to get some sleep. My bedtime is 9 p.m. All right. JG says you want to call me biased, and now you got a question. Do any pioneers list James Brown as influence? And then I'm gonna take Malik's, Jags, and Truth Teacher, and that's it. Oh wait, and Ricans and Vix. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all those early, like, see, there's generations and waves, right? Like that early wave, the Hercs, the Phases, the people from that era. They all list James Brown as a heavy influence. Like the way he, not only his music, of course, but his dancing and even the spirit of what he would say, like get up, get involved, get into it. Like I'm black and I'm proud. Say it loud, I'm black. That had a huge influence on people and how they approached expression. So yeah, Herc himself gives James Brown credit. He says that's the father. And when Herc DJs, sometimes he has a picture of James Brown on his turntables.
Just a quick story too. Herc shot at me twice on the mic before when he was out here. See, most of y'all didn't even experience that. He's like, "Oh, who's that?" Profo. Yo, shout out to Profo. I was like, "Oh shit, who Herc shot me out?" All right, Malik Bay. Okay, after Vix, which is Wreaking Havoc, that's the last question I'm taking. All right, Malik Bay asks, does he think hip hop came out of Black American culture?
I mean, I would say it comes out of working class Black American culture. You know what I mean? Because there is a tradition that was built upon to develop hip hop, and it's like working class Black American culture for sure. But it was also like, you got to remember, hip hop comes in the disco era. That's also Black culture, and a lot of disco people were opposed to hip hop. You know, that's just a fact.
Real.
Again, when we talk about OGs can't agree, like every early practitioner talks about that, like how they were hated. The term hip hop is a derogatory.
Yeah, or the hippity hoppies.
Get out of here with this hippity hop. So Black culture is also complex. It's not one thing, like a monolithic thing. There's different tastes and aesthetics and approaches. But to answer the question, yeah, I think it comes out of Black working class culture as its root. And yeah, it was influenced off other things, of course, but that was the core of it. And I think that's important, I mean, because so many things come from that community, jazz, blues, rock and roll, funk, disco, hip hop, like, and so there's a historic lesson to learn about that and to kind of see what is going on in this community, that there's so much cultural generation happening, and how it develops is like kind of interesting, and we should pay attention to that, I think,
Right.
And there's always dancing involved, like jazz, blues, rock and roll, disco, funk. These are all dance-based things too, and the dance always gets erased. All these things come out of music and dance interacting.
That's true. All right. B-Boy Jags asks, how does Midas feel about Ray Guns round in the Olympics? Uh-oh! Actually, that's the question of the night. Da, 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 da. We all seen it. We all seen how Midas dances now. So this is actually, that was in my mind. All right, Midas, go for it.
Well, I mean, let's put it like this. She got 0 points, right? So I don't think anybody would disagree with that in the context of the battle she was in. I don't even think she would disagree with that. So yeah, like in that case, it wasn't up to par with that. But like her as a dancer, I respect her. You know what I mean? She's a B girl. She gets down. She just put out a video like calling people out, like all these haters.
I saw that. Yeah,
I heard you could, all these keyboard warriors that don't have any connection to the dance. Like us in the community, we were like, okay, like I've seen her dance too, and first of all, she's a kind, really cool person. I want to say that too. Like, and then like I've seen her dance. She gets down. It's not like, she won the qualifier in her region. So if she was a better B girl out there, somebody point them out. You know what I mean? So I think like when she did, I felt like, and later listening to her interviews, like she was talking about trying to like get the creativity category as her strategy based off the point system.
Mhm.
And some of that looked half baked, like it could have been developed better. You know what I mean? But she did her thing and she got 0 points and all that. And I think she's a B girl and she gets down and she just put out a video calling people out like, oh, I heard you dance better than me. Let's see it, you know? And I don't see any breakers trying to enter that challenge because for us as a community, we're not tripping on that, you know? I don't know, like are breakers gonna enter this challenge to like do better than Reagan? I mean, I don't think she's calling out B girls and B boys. She's calling out all these keyboard warriors who have nothing to do with the culture, nothing to do with the dance. Don't even bother asking the community what we think. They just have a magical opinion all of a sudden, you know?
That is my main thing about all of this. Everything, the last 4 years, all of this is like, you guys didn't care about the dance back then anyway.
Right.
And now you care about Sasa. You didn't give a fuck about Sasa before anything. We gave a fuck about Charlie Rock, Sasa, and you know what I mean, or Wallace D, or you know, or Beaver. You know what I mean? Like we cared because these were the names that were in the ether whenever you would go to New York. These were the names that are being shouted out. You know what I'm saying? All right.
But I think, I mean, we can move on from it, but just real quick, like I think the Reagan situation is interesting for us, for dancers out there to think about. Like, there is a narrative around the dance that like ridicules it, you know, like from the breakdance fighting and like you know, there's like these movies like whatever. There's like a
Oh yeah.
with like I don't know. We've all seen in the 90s like it was clowned as an 80s thing, like oh I'm popping and breaking or whatever.
Yeah.
This narrative has shaped how like quote unquote normies or whatever like think about it. And like they're looking to clown it, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think like that, like we can't ignore that, and we gotta be more. It's very disrespectful for a bunch of people in the world to not even care what actual practitioners think about this situation. If it's that horrific, that much of a scandal, how many of them are like, "Yo, let's go talk to like the b-boy community about this,"
Right.
or you know, none
Yeah.
of them. Like so. This is how they look at your dance. Like to them, it's a tool to some agenda or something, you know. And that's a shame. And we should also like understand that we shouldn't just bow down to people who come in and kind of this is why in the 90s people were trying to say like know your roots, have integrity,
Yep.
this happened
Yep.
in the 80s.
100.
So like history can teach us stuff and we can grow with it, but if we ignore it, it's like being born. Like people say like, oh, you were born yesterday, you don't have any memory, you're an idiot if you don't take lessons from the past. You can't survive in the world if you don't have a memory and a knowledge of the past as an individual, let alone a community, you know.
Right. Agreed. All right. True teachers asks, given that the dance was an evolutionary process, do you agree that it was co-created by Puerto Ricans, West Indians, and blacks?
Again, I think it comes out of core working class African American culture, and then other communities got involved, namely Latino community, and contributed to it. And this is every pioneer figure down the line gives props to the Latinos, and we're part of it. But I don't think it like fell out of the sky as a co-creating thing right away. I think it was gradually evolved, and that's a beautiful story because it's a story of communities coming together, which was super rare actually. So again, we're missing that story when we collapse it into this like hodgepodge melting pot thing. When it evolved, and then later on you had Europeans contributing to it, Storm and Battle Squad, and then the Filipino community added a bunch to the culture in the 90s. You know,
That's a story that I could tell firsthand, and I want to tell. It's like I said, we barely even touched the 80s, and what happened right before 86 with Incredible Breakers and German and these guys innovating that hasn't been filmed. You know what I'm saying? Let alone 91 and then beyond. You know what I'm saying? There's still so much, and I'm still stuck in the 70s with this research. You know what I mean? Like,
but right, like, but I think you know this racial thing. Like, I do want to say it's important to recognize the Black roots of it because again, it's not even really a debate to me. Like, are we trying to like live in a mythological world where this didn't happen when everybody's on record talking about it? So what favor are we doing anybody? But again, that shouldn't be a narrative of exclusion. Like and Jamaican culture contributed to it definitely later on. I don't think in the 70s, like Herc didn't make it known that he was Jamaican. A lot of people didn't even know that, you know. Later on, you have definitely like in the hip hop world, and actually interestingly, like the early clubs in downtown Manhattan, like Negril, were like reggae clubs, and a lot of practitioners coming from the Bronx like started hearing reggae for the first time through those clubs, and through the Roxy and that downtown scene. There was a beginning of that, and then later on you have like Super Cat, Ghetto Red Hot, and like a lot of like Mad Lion, and you could hear it in the music. When we went to spots in the 90s, there was always like reggae played, like dance hall kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So like at the end of the night, you know, you kind of groove to that, you know, with a girl or just, you know, vibe to it. So it was like a hip hop thing, you know what I mean? To have that at parties. So so I think there's these connections and contributions that are. Then you have now like stuff like Brook Up and Flexing in Brooklyn, and totally like influence off of dance hall and like popping and threading and connecting and all this crazy stuff. So they're making major contributions to it. So I don't, you know, I don't see any problem with that. Like,
It's okay. It's just boomers. All right. Vix has a question. What would be your advice to someone trying to do scholarly research about the history of breaking? Okay.
yeah, I mean, thank you for that question. That is a good question. Again, it's like hard to. So I'm trying to be concise as much as possible. These are like big questions, but I would say like, see, in the book and in my dissertation, like I have a heading in the first chapter about, and it says paying attention to practitioners. That's my motto and theme going into it. Like my research that I recognize that as the problem, and it also became like my method for research is just tracking down as many practitioners as possible, getting their stories, whether it's already recorded or on text or just personally talking with them and trying to just I try to find everything I possibly could, you know, and listening to it. Like I think listening is a key word for research, and listening to it with an open mind, without an agenda, even when I talk to people or try to, you know, interview people and stuff, like I try not to put my bias in there as much as possible, to just have an open-ended question to get their response and take it in and listen, you know. And I think if you do that, and then obviously like think about that critically, I think you're already like way ahead of people, because so much of what hip hop in history and knowledge and information that's out there is people with a preconceived notion and assumption about a community that they're kind of like. I'm thinking of documentarians and scholars and reporters who are afraid to even go in these communities. So they're kind of taking like stereotypes and surface level things and making narratives out of it, rather than going and talking to people and listening to their testimony and then building their theories off of that.
I would say the same thing to the people in this chat. How many B-boys and B-girls do you know personally to ask these questions at the very moment? And it doesn't matter what area, because I know B-boys and B-girls in South Carolina, North Carolina, Atlanta, Florida, New York, Texas, all through the state of Texas, California, Washington, you know, Canada. There's no reasons to argue just on here when you could reach out to your local B-boy or B-girl. Why not, if you really want to know? Okay. I'm gonna get one more question because it's already almost 2 hours in. We still got plugged this month. All right. Dill Will, ask it again. You're the last question. Okay? Dill Will. For real though, did you skip my question? I need you to go hand raise, just like Manny did. He said, hand raise or question. For real though. So you're the last, because I'm not going to ignore you, okay? I'm not going to ignore you. All right. So actually, Dill, why did you ask already? Dill, did you ask already? Okay. So as we wait for the last question from Dill Will, because I didn't skip you, everyone else is talking. All right, we're going to plug Happening in November. Wait, let me see where it is. Is this it? No. Is this it? Yep. November 23rd. We got the Style Elements Monster Squad 30th anniversary happening in San Jose, California. Obviously, legendary crew. You boomers don't know because you think Rocksteady is the only crew that exists. Style Elements crew, 30th anniversary. One of the biggest influences in modern breaking, happening the November 23rd, San Jose, California. We have the Last Man Standing happening with judges Po One, Crumbs, and Dole from Korea. Host Spirit Realmer. Look, we got Joy Koi, who's a style element, Joy Koi. And then originally stands alone. This is going to be happening in SJBC in Japantown, 632 North 5th Street, San Jose, California. Got anything to say about the event, Midas?
Yeah, man. I mean, again, community is key, bro. And first for me, you know, we talk and dialogue about the history, and obviously there's important things to draw from that. But at the end of the day, let's get down, man. Let's come together and celebrate and vibe. And yeah, I mean, I'll be there celebrating the crew. And like you said, and thank you for like the plug, man. And the influence style and sad, you know, I'm a fan of the crew, to be honest. So I'm definitely part of it as well. So we're gonna be out there just vibing out and celebrating with everybody. You know what I'm saying? So I'm really looking forward. Tickets are only a bit like there won't be any like cash at the door type of thing. So I would, you know,
Okay. I wasn't sure. All right.
I mean, people can get tickets on the door, but it's going to be through Eventbrite. So I would recommend people go to the Styleman's Instagram, or you could go on Eventbrite itself and look up Styleman's Crew 30th anniversary and get tickets that way, because it's going to be all through like e-tickets basically. So
it's funny because like everyone in the chat talking smack, they need a walker because they're too old to move. Oh, I said it to y'all. Okay, Bill Will. Dope, you had a good question. In your opinion, who is more important to breaking, Crumbs or Bromine? Oh, that's some crew shit. You're gonna get this guy in trouble.
nah, bro, I can't answer that. They're equally important, man. They're equally important.
Talk about hot question. Now, that's the hot seat question. That's the real controversy, bro.
Nah, man, those are my brothers, and then yeah, again, I'm a fan. You know what I'm saying? Like when Strategic Monsters came out, and that influenced us for sure. And you know, not just the dancing, but again, the writing and Freestyle Fellowship you heard, and I was like already like that was like boom. You know what I mean?
They made that song popular, right? Like they made that song a b-boy anthem, you know, for a while. You know what I'm saying?
And you know, like Styleman's had a big tidal wave influence, but I also like shout out to the Bay, man, because like you know yourself and Renegades and Rock Forest and all the people that were doing things out there. You know, it was just a beauty. I mean, I feel lucky to have been on the West Coast and in the time and period I was. You know, I mean, I'm a product of that. So yeah, like Crumbs and Remind, legendary figures, man.
Yeah, we gotta do a history of like, you know, I think I'm talking to Dregs from History of the Bay. He has a podcast where he interviews like all types of just rappers. He interviewed DJ Qbert. I said, yo, we have to talk about the Bay, because not just in like, you know, all types of dancing, from the strutters to the b-boys to the turfers. Like this is like major influence, like period in movement. You know what I'm saying?
Even like speaking of Strategic Monsters, Housing Authority, you know,
Yeah,
and
shout out to Fly, Richmond, Tony, Super Dave, like, you know what I mean? Like,
you know what I mean? The MCs in the Bay, Dell, and the whole high road thing. And bro, there's like so much influence. The writers, the DJs, it was just like innovative stuff coming out of the Bay, man. So we always.
It's funny because like, when I first started dancing, I used to live in Richmond, and the first people I saw was Richmond and Tony, like at a house party. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of brothers too. There's Samoan. And I saw them, I was like, oh, who are these dudes? These guys are crazy. So to see that, like, it's funny because I was still, and then shout out to Richmond and Tony. They're working on the Michael Jackson show. You know what I'm saying? And like, this is what I'm saying. Like this is Super Dave. Like he used to work at he was working at the mall, and I would see him and say what's up and stuff. And that's what I mean. Like it's crazy to see like, yo, these are the people I grew up with. You know what I mean? And it's like, but it's just funny because I went to the breaking route when they stayed in the freestyle hip hop dance route. You know what I'm saying? So Like it's just weird. Like we have this every time we see each other. It's like that's what I'm saying. Mikey Disco. Look at who wasn't thrown with Super Dave, Mikey Disco, Fly. You know, Richmond Tony. But I was the only one that was like, I'm gonna go break. And you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, I mean, you made your impact big time in that realm. So it's like, and I'm sure that carries. It's like sometimes I think, and you could tell me what you think, but like, even if you don't do strutting or freestyling, still, you know, and that influence around you shapes you. You know what I'm saying? So
Bro.
you always connected to that.
It's there. It's there. That's just that's what connected me to Flowmaster. Because like I wasn't really a b-boy, but when I saw Flow, I was like, wait a second. That looks like it's like it has like a bop. He has a he's not just like out here just crossed up. He's like he has a character. He has a bop. He has and then once I saw Ramon, I was like, I'm starting to see it. And that's when that made me like, okay, I want to investigate breaking. You know what I'm saying? So it's just funny, like, and me and Why Not have a very similar story when it comes to that. He started out like watching like Otis Stretch and Link and them and Loose Joint, and but then he got into breaking and he just translated, that movement into his breaking. So, I mean, it was just like we have that similar like influence and stuff. But yo, man, this has been very good. Oh, Media Circus. What do you know about Media Circus? Oh, are you from the Bay? Shout out to Pop Tart, Phaso. You know what I'm saying? Like I just did a performance with those guys. Like we did the history of the Bay. Like we actually had a cipher where it was like strutters, turfers, and b-boys. So it's kind of like it was kind of dope to kind of like join up and be like, these are the generations of dancers in the Bay Area. You know what I'm saying? So that was really dope. Yeah, man. So yeah, we got to keep building, man. And yeah, I need to give you some history about out here. Like there's intricate history how we kept it alive as well in the early 90s, and there's a big story about that. But again, thank you so much for being on here, man, and answering the questions and dealing with these boomers. And yes, I'm gonna keep clowning you because you guys keep talking in the chat and you guys don't dance. And if we were to battle you, you probably could get like, break a hip. I don't know. And you guys want to debate? Like, okay, go ahead.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, man, and it's much respect, much love. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's an honor.
Like I said, we're all here together. I mean, there's not honestly, man. Like, we're not even over 10 people that dance that try to do the research, bro. Like, look at that. You know how many practitioners are there? It's like okay, you, Why Not, Nemesis, myself, Pluto, Sir Norn Rad, and then Moncel. Like, come on. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but that are vocal and just like and really, Mary. Mary. I mean, that's another. You know what I'm saying? So that's 8. It's not even 10.
And yeah, like we talked a lot about history, but like you're saying, all this stuff is important, man. Like the Olympics thing, the 90s thing, the new things happening that I don't even know about. You know what I mean? I want to learn.
Yeah, that's like, dude, so many different styles from like DMV area to New Jersey to like Chicago. You know what I'm saying? Right. Toronto, like, dude, it goes on and on and on, and we're a part of this evolution. You know what I mean? It's like
it's a big deal, man. And sometimes we take it for granted. So I just want to encourage everyone out there, man. Don't take what you're doing for granted. This stuff makes waves and impacts things. Like we're talking about Rich and Tone and all the b-boys that influence other styles, and it's a dope thing, and we should hold it up high, man, because it affected your life and people way beyond you too,
bro. We're so talking. And that's the thing.
The practitioner thing, man, it's like you're still repping too, like after all these years, still getting down, and that's why again I look forward to just vibing. You know what I'm saying, with everybody. I miss doing that actually.
Actually, I don't even go out. All I go to is dance events, bro. I don't go out no more. I'm too old for that shit. I'm about to be 50 next year, but I'm still here trying to get an airplay, bro. Like that's what I'm saying. More like you boomers just sitting around on the internet arguing with people and not even showing your faces. Well, I'm out here making videos with me, and yeah, I'm here getting the workouts and like benching 200 pounds like that. Well, anyway, I'm all flexing like. All right, and yeah, shout out to Crumbs too, man. That guy's been putting in work as well, man. Like as far as like, and that's the one thing before I want to say is like we're the first generation of elders that are looking the way we are. because like Kenny and Legs did not look like, not necessarily like kind of Kenny, but then everyone slowed down. But now we're getting to the levels of just like Skilroy. Like that guy's 56, bro. And that guy's killing it. That fool did a gainer. Like he never did a gainer in front of people, but he did it at a competition at 55. Like, get out of here, bro. Like, there's no what's the level? Like, we gotta keep going, you know what I'm saying? You gotta keep going.
No doubt.
That's it. There you go. All right, brother. Hang on tight before I wrap it up. Again, you can find his book on Amazon, right? The Birth of Breaking.
Yes,
You know what I'm
sir.
saying? You can find it on Amazon by Midus. You could follow him on Instagram right here at King_Mitus. You can find me on Instagram at PROFO_FLGZ. This has been The Trades with Midus. Thanks for tuning in. And boomers, start stretching because all you guys is doing is arguing on the internet. I gotta say peace and see y'all later. Hang on. I'm going to talk to you after.